the offering for the thirsty dust. There are some hungers that food cannot satisfy, hungers that are not of the belly, but of the soul, of the very dust we are all destined to become. I learned this not from a monk or a holy book, but from a small mountain of rice on my grandmother's porch. It began the way things often do in Cambodia, with the pressing, inescapable heat of the dry season. I had left the frantic energy of Phnom Penh behind, trading the roar of motos for the drone of cicadas. My grandmother, my Yi Sathya, was ill, not with anything the doctors in the city could name, but with the simple, quiet fatting that comes with 90 years of life lived under a relentless sun. I went back to our ancestral village in Kampong Chnang, a place of red earth and soaring sugar palms, to be with her. Our house was like 100 others in the village, a wooden heart raised on thick stilts, its shaded space underneath a refuge for sleeping dogs and roosting chickens. Life there was slow, measured by the rising of the sun and the call to prayer from the distant Wat. Each evening, just as the sky bruised purple and the first stars pricked the darkness, my Yi would perform her small ritual. She would take a fresh banana leaf, place upon it a perfect, small mound of steamed rice, and set it on the edge of the wide porch. Next to it, a tiny clay bowl of water and a single stick of incense. She would light the incense, its fragrant smoke a thin, questioning finger pointing to the heavens. Her lips would move, but the words were a whisper, too soft for me to catch, swallowed by the immense chorus of the night. To me, a young man raised on logic and concrete, it was a simple offering for the spirits of the land, the Nik Ta, or perhaps for the ancestors. A sweet, harmless tradition. I would watch her frail form shuffle back inside, and I'd feel a pang of love for this woman and her gentle, ancient ways. For the first week, the nights were peaceful. The offering would be gone in the morning, taken by geckos or night birds. It was part of the rhythm. But then, one night, something changed. The air was thick, so humid it felt like you were breathing water. The cicadas were a deafening, electric wall of sound. I was lying on my thin mat, listening to Yi's shallow breaths from the other side of the room, when I noticed a silence where there should not have been one. The cicadas had stopped. All of them, all at once. The void they left was profound, a sudden deafness that made the tiny sounds of the house seem loud. The creak of a floorboard, the sigh of the thatch roof. And then, a new sound began. It was thin, a high, desperate whistling, like wind being forced through the narrowest crack in a tomb. It wasn't the wind. There was no breeze. The incense smoke on the porch, which I could see from my spot, rose in a perfectly straight line. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a thread of pure misery weaving through the darkness. I sat up, my skin crawling. I felt a pressure building outside, a static charge in the air that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. And then, the house groaned. It wasn't the sound of old wood settling. I knew those sounds intimately. This was a deep, guttural complaint, the sound of the thick stilts that held us aloft protesting a weight they were never meant to bear. It sounded as if a giant, impossibly heavy creature had sat down just outside, its immense mass pushing our home into the very earth. The floor beneath me vibrated with a low, resonant thrum. My heart hammered against my ribs. I wanted to call out to my grandmother, but my throat was sealed shut with a cold, primal fear. My eyes were fixed on the porch, on that small offering bathed in the weak glow of the single candle we kept burning. The single stick of incense, which should have burned for an hour, suddenly glowed cherry red, then disintegrated into ash in a single, silent second. The smoke vanished as if it had been inhaled. I watched, mesmerized and horrified, as each individual grain of rice on the banana leaf began to tremble. They vibrated, dancing like tiny white insects on the green leaf, agitated by a force I could not see. Then the small clay bowl of water. A faint hiss like a single drop on a hot pan reached my ears. The water was gone, not spilled, evaporated. In an instant, the bowl was bone dry, a faint wisp of steam rising from it before vanishing into the night. The whistling intensified, closer now, seeming to slide along the wooden walls of the house, searching for a way in. The groaning of the stilts deepened, a sound of absolute strain. And through it all, I could smell something new. Underneath the scent of night-blooming jasmine and damp earth, there was a smell of ancient dust, of dry, sun-baked bones, and an undercurrent of something else, an ancient, bottomless sorrow. A grief so profound it had become a physical thing, a tangible hunger. Just as quickly as it began, it was over. The pressure lifted. The groaning stopped. The whistling faded into nothing. And after a moment of ringing silence, the cicadas, tentatively at first, and then in a triumphant roar, started their song again. I stayed frozen for a long time, listening to the familiar, comforting noise, trying to convince myself I had imagined it all. A waking dream brought on by the oppressive heat. But when I finally crept to the porch, the proof was there. The incense was gone. The bowl was dry. And the rice was still there. But it was changed. Each grain was dull, gray, and brittle, as if all the life, all the moisture, all the essence had been sucked out of it, leaving behind a husk of what it once was. The next morning, Yi was weaker. Her eyes, usually so bright, were clouded. She barely touched her breakfast of rice porridge. I didn't tell her what I had seen. How could I? I barely believed it myself. But that night, it happened again. The cicadas fell silent. The thin, sorrowful whistle began. The impossible weight settled on our house, making the timbers cry out in protest. And again, I watched as the life was drawn out of the offering, the incense turning to ash, the water to steam. This time, I was bolder, or perhaps more foolish. I crept to the shuttered window that looked out onto the porch. My hands shook as I pushed the wooden slat open just a crack. I had to see. I had to know what was causing this. I saw nothing. Only the porch, the offering, and the oppressive velvet black of the village night. But I could feel it. The presence was a cold spot in the humid air, a suffocating pressure that made my lungs ache. The whistling was right there, just on the other side of the wall, a sound that felt like it was scraping away at my sanity. I saw the rice tremble and turn to dust. I saw the water vanish. And I saw something else. The stout wooden railing of the porch, where the presence seemed to be centered, was beginning to look dry. The wood, usually dark and damp with humidity, was lightening in color, the grain becoming stark and pronounced, as if it had been left in a kiln for a week. The thing outside wasn't just consuming the offering. It was drinking the very moisture from the world around it. I slammed the shutter closed, my heart a wild bird in my chest. This was not a spirit of the land. This was not an ancestor. This was something else, something empty, something thirsty. This went on for a week. Every night, the same terrifying ritual. And every morning, my grandmother was a little more faded, a little more translucent. Her skin became like parchment, her voice a dry rustle of leaves. It was as if the thing outside, not content with the small offering, was now sipping at the life from within the house, and Yi, in her frailty, was the easiest source. I knew I had to do something. The city boy in me screamed to take her and run, to go back to Phnom Penh, to the sterile safety of a hospital. But a deeper, older part of me, the part that was born of this red earth, knew that you cannot run from a thing that is not bound by distance. This was a spiritual sickness, and it required a spiritual cure. One afternoon, when Yi was in a rare, lucid sleep, I walked to the edge of the village where Ta Kem, the oldest man in the commune, lived. His face was a beautiful map of wrinkles, his eyes holding a wisdom that went beyond mere decades. I told him everything, my voice shaking, feeling like a child confessing a nightmare. He listened patiently, nodding slowly, his gaze fixed on the dusty ground. When I finished, he was silent for a long time. He took a long pull from his rustic pipe, the smoke mingling with the scent of dried fish and charcoal. "You are from the city, Rith," he said, his voice raspy with age. "You see the ritual, but you do not understand the words. You see the offering, but you do not understand the debt." He told me a story then, a local legend I had never heard. He spoke of the Neek Kamlos Sach, the one who is fleshless, the dry one. He said it was not a demon, not born of malice, but of a sorrow so immense it had collapsed in on itself, creating a void, a hunger that could never be filled. It was the spirit of a woman who had lost her entire family to a great famine, generations ago. She had watched her children and husband waste away, and in her grief, she had refused all food and water, withering in her own home until she was nothing but dust and sorrow. Her spirit, he said, was now bound to that hunger. It did not eat food. It consumed essence. The life, the moisture, the warmth, the very memory of what it was to be alive. It is drawn to the weak, the fatting, the ones who are close to leaving this world, hopping to steal a little of the warmth they still possess. My blood ran cold. The offering, I whispered. Yi puts it out every night. Ta Kem looked at me with sad, knowing eyes. The offering is not to satisfy it, boy. A grain of rice to a starving man does not satisfy. It only reminds him of his hunger. The offering is a distraction, a toll. It is a small sip to keep it from taking a long drink. It is a prayer that says, take this and leave us the rest, for tonight. I understood then, the terrifying, soul-crushing truth of it. My grandmother wasn't feeding a spirit. She was negotiating with a black hole of grief, and she was losing. The dry one was growing bolder, its thirst increasing as Yi's own life force dwindled. What can I do? I begged him. There must be a way, a monk, a blessing. He shook his head slowly. The monks can bless the living, they can pray for the dead, but the Neek Kamla Sach is neither. It is an echo, a pain that has forgotten how to die. You cannot fight it. All you can do is pay the toll, and pray it is enough. He gave me one piece of advice. Whatever you do, he warned, his voice dropping to a whisper, do not let it know you are afraid. Fear is a kind of life, a strong, vibrant energy. It finds fear delicious. That night, I made the offering myself. I tried to copy my grandmother's movements exactly, my hands trembling as I placed the rice and water on the porch. I lit the incense and tried to fill my mind with calm, with anything but the terror that was clawing at my insides. As the sun bled out of the sky, I sat with Yi. I held her frail, cool hand. I'm here, Yi, I whispered. I'm not going anywhere. She looked at me, a flicker of the old light in her eyes. The debt must be paid, my child, she rasped. Always. The cicadas stopped. The silence pressed in. The whistling began, but this time it was different. It was louder, more insistent. The groaning of the stilts was a shriek of tortured wood. The pressure on the house was immense, and I could hear a dry, scraping sound against the walls, like sandpaper on old bone. It knew I was there. It knew there was new life, strong life in the house. I sat in the dark, forcing my breathing to be slow, and even repeating a prayer my mother had taught me as a child. The candle flame on the small altar flickered wildly, casting dancing shadows that looked like grasping fingers. The whistling moved from the porch to the window, then to the door. It was testing the house, testing me. I could feel it trying to pry into my mind, a wave of desiccating sorrow washing over me, threatening to drown me in hopelessness. It showed me images of loss, of dust, of endings. It wanted me to despair. It wanted me to be afraid. I squeezed my grandmother's hand, anchoring myself to her, to the love I felt for her. No, I whispered into the darkness. Not tonight. The scraping at the door grew frantic. A loud crack echoed through the room as the wooden bar securing the door splintered. The whistling was inside the sound, a needle of pure malice. I could smell the dust, so thick it was like the house was filled with the air of a disturbed tomb. I thought of the offering, the small portion I had put out. I suddenly realized my mistake. I had given it the same amount my grandmother had, but I was here now. My life force was stronger, a brighter beacon. To the dry one, my presence was an invitation to a feast. The tiny offering was no longer a distraction, it was an insult. The house gave a final, shuddering groan, so violent that a clay pot fell from a shelf and shattered on the floor. The whistling was a shriek now, a sound of fury and hunger, right outside the door. And then a new sound, from my grandmother. A soft sigh, a release. The pressure vanished, the whistling stopped, the scraping was gone, the silence that followed was absolute. Slowly, timidly, the cicadas began to sing again. I sat in the dark, my body rigid, for what felt like an eternity. The candle had burned out. The only light was the faint, pre-dawn gray filtering through the cracks in the walls. I could no longer hear my grandmother breathing. I knew. Before I moved, what I would find. Her hand in mine was cold, utterly, completely cold. Her skin, which had been like parchment, now seemed almost translucent. She was a hollowed-out thing, a beautiful, delicate husk. She had paid the debt, in full. I stumbled out onto the porch as the sun began to rise. The offering was untouched. The rice sat there, plump and white. The water in the bowl was still full. It had not needed the offering. It had taken a much larger, much more final payment. I have been in this house for a year now. I never went back to Phnom Penh. I can't. I am the keeper of this place, the guardian of my grandmother's memory, and I am the one who pays the toll. Every night I make the offering, but now it is larger, a heaping mound of rice, a big bowl of water, 2 sticks of incense, an offering for her and an offering for me, a plea for the dry one to remember its bargain. Sometimes it is enough. In the morning, the rice will be gray husks, the water gone. On those nights, I feel a quiet, cold dread. But some nights, the offering is untouched. On those nights, the cicadas fall silent. A thin, sorrowful whistle snakes its way through the darkness. The stilts of the house groan under an impossible weight. And I sit in the dark, my own body feeling a little colder, a little drier, and I wonder how long a person can live while being slowly, patiently, consumed. I wonder when my debt will be paid. So if you are ever traveling in the quiet provinces of my country, and you see a house on stilts in the twilight, a house with a single, lonely light burning, if you see a small offering of rice on the porch, a small mountain before a stick of incense whose smoke curls sluggishly in the humid night air, do not stop, do not stare, just keep moving, and pray for the ones inside. Pray that their offering is enough to last them until the dawn, because there are some hungers that can never be filled. There is some sorrow that can never be quenched, and it is always, always thirsty for more.